Chile's Estadio Nacional, the country's most iconic football stadium, stopped being a symbol of national pride and was turned into something far darker, a prison where thousands were detained, tortured, and even killed. This is the harrowing story of when football stadiums became prisons under Augusto Pinochet's brutal regime. Welcome to football, the beautiful game, where we uncover the most powerful, dramatic, and sometimes darkest stories in football history. Today, we're diving into the chilling events of Chile in 1973, when the sport was no longer just a game, but a battleground for political terror. If you love football history and these in-depth stories, make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss a video. Now, let's go back to 1973. This was a year that would forever change Chile, its people, and even its football culture. On September 11, 1973, a military coup, led by General Augusto Pinochet, overthrew the democratically elected socialist president, Salvador Allende. Chile, which had been one of the most politically stable nations in Latin America, suddenly descended into dictatorship. Allende, trapped in La Moneda Palace as the military closed in, reportedly took his own life rather than surrender. With Allende gone, Pinochet seized control, and what followed was a brutal campaign of repression against anyone suspected of opposing the new regime. Intellectuals, activists, and political dissidents were rounded up en masse. But there was one major problem. The government needed a place to hold thousands of prisoners. That's when the country's most famous football stadium, Estadio Nacional, became a house of terror. Estadio Nacional, home to Chilean football and the site of historic victories, was turned into an internment camp almost overnight. In the days following the coup, the stadium became a massive detention center where over 40,000 people were held. Some were simply political prisoners, arrested for speaking out against Pinochet. Others were students, intellectuals, or union leaders. The military saw anyone connected to the former government as a threat, and inside the stadium, the treatment of prisoners was nothing short of barbaric. Many detainees were tortured in the locker rooms and offices beneath the stands. Reports emerged of horrific abuse, including beatings, waterboarding, and executions. The playing field itself became a place of forced labor, with prisoners made to clean the stadium or sit silently in the stands for hours under the watchful eyes of armed soldiers. One of the most haunting stories is that of Víctor Jara, a Chilean folk singer and activist. Jara was an outspoken supporter of Allende and a voice of resistance. He was captured, brought to Estadio Nacional, and brutally beaten. Soldiers reportedly broke his hand so he could never play guitar again. Then, after days of torment, they executed him, riddling his body with bullets. His story became a symbol of the unimaginable horrors that unfolded within the stadium. While the stadium was being used as a prison, Pinochet's government still understood the power of football. Despite the atrocities happening inside Estadio Nacional, the regime continued to stage matches, trying to maintain an illusion of normalcy. One of the most infamous moments came just 2 months after the coup. Chile was scheduled to play a World Cup qualifier against the Soviet Union at Estadio Nacional. The USSR, fully aware of what was happening in Chile, refused to play, demanding that FIFA intervene and move the match. FIFA ignored these calls, insisting that sports should remain separate from politics. With the Soviet Union boycotting the match, Chile took to the field alone. In a surreal scene, the Chilean players passed the ball around before scoring into an empty net. FIFA officially awarded them the victory, allowing Chile to qualify for the 1974 World Cup. This moment was used as propaganda by Pinochet's regime, showcasing the team's triumph while thousands were still being held captive in the very stands where fans had once cheered. Despite the fear, football in Chile never fully succumbed to Pinochet's control. Fans and players alike found ways to resist. Colo-Colo and University of Chile, two of the nation's biggest clubs, became symbols of opposition. Fans would chant anti-Pinochet slogans at matches, knowing the risks but refusing to stay silent. Over time, the truth about Estadio Nacional could not be buried. By the 1980s, human rights groups began exposing the full extent of Pinochet's abuses. As Chile moved toward democracy in the late 1980s and early 1990s, the stadium's horrific past was openly acknowledged. Today, a section of Estadio Nacional remains preserved as a memorial. Visitors can see the locker rooms where prisoners were tortured, the stands where they were forced to sit in silence, and the plaques honoring those who never made it out. Football fans who once celebrated victories there now visit to remember those who suffered. The story of Estadio Nacional serves as a stark reminder of how easily sports can be manipulated by power-hungry regimes. A place meant for joy, unity, and passion became a symbol of oppression, fear, and resilience. But in the end, the spirit of football endured. Chileans reclaimed their stadium, their sport, and ultimately, their freedom. Today, when La Roja plays at Estadio Nacional, it stands not as a symbol of terror, but as a testament to survival and resistance. This was the story of how a football stadium became a prison, but it's also a story of how football, no matter how dark the times, remains a force of hope and defiance.